All righty. I think we are live.
Awesome. Hello, Internet.
Hello, Internet, out there in Facebook land. Thank you all for joining us for the OutLoud podcast with me and myself. My co hosts are off today. One of my co hosts, Doug, we call him Dougie Fresh here on the show, recently he had a fire.
Oh no.
He's out right now. So send some good energy his way, good thoughts his way. And if you follow him on social media, maybe throw something in his cash app to help him get some new place to stay. Um, but the Out Loud podcast, we are here talking about topics that affect LGBTQ2S plus individuals in concordance with the Out Loud anthology from Red or Green Books. Um, Today, we are talking about coming out, as this Friday is National Coming Out Day, October 11th. Yes, yes, yes. And we are also featuring Matthew Brown, who is in the building with us today. Not really, but it looks nicer where he's at. Um, Matthew, tell us a little bit about yourself. I see Rich is telling me you did Albuquerque Slam. You're a big deal. Tell us a little bit
Thank
about
you.
you.
I was born and raised in Aslan. New Mexico is and will always be my home. I grew up going to a lot of local poetry shows, so that intergenerational model was a huge part of my upbringing in the local slam scene in Albuquerque. I graduated from Albuquerque High. I was on a bunch of teams with folks like Mercedes and Eva, and just like a lot of wonderful humans, the Don MacGyvers and the Jessica Helen Lopez's. And so those people really influenced my writing and my craft growing up. Now I call Colorado home, but when people ask me where I'm from, I always start with the beginning and say that I was born and raised in New Mexico. It blew kind of away, but I have a giant New Mexican flag on the other side of that thing. So, always represent. I've got my Zia tattoo. So that's just like an elevator pitch of a little bit of my story.
Good, good. And yeah, I do know a few of those names, amazing writers. So that's awesome to have that influence. Um, so today we're focusing most on National Coming Out Day. Like I said, that's this Friday, the 11th, and it was to maintain or create positivity around coming out. And I know a lot of times on the show we do have to iterate that while recently some of these things seem maybe outdated, we are of an age, right, where we remember where those things may not have been as celebrated before. Um, I recently had a friend who had issues with their coming out. It hasn't always been safe and celebrated. Um, do you mind, Matthew, sharing with us your coming out story or your ideas around the topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So like many folks, coming out is kind of like a lifelong process that never really ends, but kind of going to the beginning. I have two really unique coming out stories. One was really positive and one was less so. And so I kind of got to experience both of the spectrum. So I always knew that I was queer growing up. That was just always a part of my soul out of the box. And I remember having, a mom that I was really close with that I think she always kind of knew to begin with, just because a lot of mothers do tend to kind of know, especially with their firstborn sons. And so when I was, I'd say in about high school, maybe my freshman year, I remember waking up that day and knowing that day when I woke up that that was the day I was going to come out to her. And I remember carrying that weight in my chest all day through my freshman year of high school. I remember waiting for her to pick me up, and it was just like a stone in my stomach. And the whole drive home, I didn't say anything, and I was kind of thinking about how to do it. And then finally, I just kind of came out with it, and I was just like, "Mom, I have to tell you something, and I'm gay." And she was already waiting for me to do that. And I think along the way, there were little breadcrumbs that she left for me to let me know that when I'm ready, or if it makes sense, that I can come out and that it's okay. And so obviously that's what every queer youth needs, is that sort of relationship and that confidence of knowing that it is safe to come out, because you know at the heart of coming out is the issue of safety and the fact that not everyone has the ability to do so. And so that
Right.
was one huge formative experience, a very positive one. But not long after, while I was still in high school, I remember being out at school, but not out to the rest of my family. And I had a cousin who went to high school with, and he had heard a rumor about me, and it ended up finding its way to my father. And I remember he called me on a Sunday, and was just extremely homophobic and asking a lot of questions and insinuations. And he called me a lot of homophobic slurs, and it was incredibly difficult and incredibly traumatizing. And I just remember telling my dad, I was just like, you can say that I'm going to hell, but there are things that you have done that if that's the case, then like I'll see you there type of deal. Like, just throwing that same vitriol and energy back. And I was only 13, 14 at the time. So it was a really heavy thing. But my father was always really homophobic. There are memories I have, even when I was younger, that it was something that I was preparing for. And it was incredibly difficult growing up, knowing that one of your parents, one of the people who brought you in this world, is going to be disappointed in you. And it's just a matter of time. And when we finally did reach that blowout, it was worse than I could have imagined. And it was really difficult. It put a tremendous schism between my father and I. And only, I'd say, within the past 2 years have we come around in ways that I never thought that we could. Now I'm at a point where my father knows that I'm gay. He has met my fiance. He has given him a gift, which is something that I'd never think would happen. And he wants to come to my wedding. So the topography, that like character arc, has just been so incredible. And I know that not every homophobic parent sees the light in that way. Sometimes they never reach it. But it was just a really incredible thing to see what, a decade and some change could really do, and just removing myself from the situation and coming back around, having built an entire life for myself. So yeah, both experiences coming out, good and bad experience.
Yeah, and I'm happy that your father has came around. Um,
Thank you.
and you said in the beginning it's been a lifelong journey, and that's something that I tell people a lot. It's not just this one event. It's not I'm coming out and then the whole world knows and then you're good,
Yeah.
right? It's something, every time you get a new job or every time you meet someone new, or it's a constant thing that you're going throughout your life. Um, I actually had a friend recently who was like, I've been this way so long, but they finally told like an uncle or someone who had the same kind of like very heated thing. And I was like, I understand, but again, it's a journey. It continues to happen. Um, and mine was similar to yours in the fact that my mother knew before I even knew, I think. Um, because she would always make jokes about it, and I'd be like, I'm not gay. I never said I was gay. And then like one day I was just like, oh, this is my girlfriend. And she was like, oh, duh.
Right.
But and I was thankful for that. But it's the other people in the family. They find out and then they started negative things. And I don't talk to a lot of them anymore either. Um, but yeah, I also used to work at this place called the Safe House, or well, volunteer there when I was a teenager. And what it was a home for youth that had ran away because they were unsafe at home. And a lot of the reasons we had youth that came there was because they came out to their parents or they were having thoughts or something of that nature. I actually write about it in my book. I had one friend who, like, in order to be able to go back home, I pretended to be his girlfriend so that he could pretend he was straight. And it's just, it still happens today, where youth are not safe in those situations. So I think that National Coming Out Day is definitely something to be celebrated. The people who had the strength to stand up and do that, and those who didn't, we understand. We understand. Um, Matthew, as a writer, where does your story and your, let's say, queerness, I don't know how you identify, but queerness, I feel like
Yeah,
covers everything. How does that
absolutely.
how does that play its way into your writing?
So I'd say queerness is a larger element now than it was even a couple of years ago. I'd say a lot of my writing was born from really negative experiences. Like most poets, it's kind of our fuel, and it gives voice to a lot of the pain that we're going through. A lot of my original writing started out talking about depression and anxiety and mental illness. And then when I started taking medications for my depression, it made things worse. So then the element of addiction and prescription medication was woven into that narrative. But now that I'm a little bit older, now that I am self-employed and I do work that is considered sex work, the element of queerness has become a forefront in how I represent myself and how I dress, and especially in my writing. And I'm sure that you can kind of relate to bringing a lot of queer stories to an all straight audience is always an interesting experience. And you very rarely are they ready for it, but always do they need to hear it. And so that's been fun, coming out in different ways as a performer and in front of people in the audience. It's been really exciting.
Yes. And so you said recently it started to find its way in there more often. You kind of already answered this, but do you think it's important for that representation to be there for maybe other queer people seeing you as a poet?
Absolutely. I think representation is everything. I think, when I was in high school, so much of what I realized was possible was because of the alumni, was because of the older generation that came into my school and performed on stage and showed me what an authentic story was sounded like coming from, the person who wrote it. And so I think representation is a core element of anything, but especially when you have queerness or like intersectionality, it's just important to see someone else doing it and be like, I can do that. And I know that I can because I see someone else already doing the work. And so that kind of leaves the door open for other people. And I think that's something that New Mexico does almost better than any other state when it comes to poetry, is there's always that intergenerational model. There's always the old heads and the new poets, and they always are interacting. And so that was a big part of it for me.
That's awesome. Um, I'm trying to think of how to word this question.
Of course.
Because you're over there. Colorado, as far as I know, is pretty liberal. I know Albuquerque's like in the middle, right?
Yeah, they're very
Uh,
much sister cities or
so
sister
like
states. Yeah.
for the current political climate, and the attempt to take away a lot of rights for the members of the community, what is an important message that you want to give to the younger generation or those who are struggling, maybe even in states where it's a little more conservative and they're more at a challenge?
So I'm very much a fan of like the scorched earth approach. I think that there are people out there that are not going to like you or your lifestyle, no matter how you live it, regardless of whether it's family friendly or not. There are people that are just not going to like you. So I'm of the belief that you should rub your queerness in everyone's faces. You should be so queer and so loud that it's unavoidable. I love big, kinky, inappropriate pride parties. I love people's view of the nuclear family being challenged. And I feel like as queer people, we challenge that status quo, whether we're, traditional or not. And so I think there is an argument for trying to reach across the political aisle and be agreeable, but there's some of those people are never going to care about us. And so I think the idea of like chosen family and the tribe and really advocating in our own communities is the way to do it. And now living in Colorado Springs, this is actually one of the most conservative parts, not only of the country, but in the state of Colorado. And so I'm kind of in a liberal bubble, surrounded by a conservative bubble, and then another liberal bubble. And so there's like political intersectionality dripping through that. And so it's really, really complicated. But for me, I don't want to be an agreeable queer. I want to live authentically and out loud, and I want it to challenge and make heterosexuals uncomfortable, because heterosexuality makes me uncomfortable, and I've had to live under it for my entire life. And so to be seen and to be acknowledged, that is the least that we deserve.
Yes, very well said. Wow.
Thank you.
Yes. And I definitely agree. And see that title, Out Loud, right? Living out loud and getting, you know, being part of the revolution, right? To make change. And I agree. There are people who are never going to stand. You're not going to change their mind. So you do have to just stay in your truth, stand in your truth. And I think that's something that most poets do. Um, and that's why a lot of times I've noticed when I'm in poetry spaces. I'm also in very queer spaces, and I
Yes.
don't that intersectionality is kind of like, oh well, I wonder why. um, but yes, I agree. Um, Now, I know you are going to perform some pieces for us. Do you have a piece of work out, like a book or anything that
I
our
do.
viewers?
Absolutely. So this is my book. It's called Among God and Other Drugs. It is actually a fully illustrated book of poetry. So it has dozens of illustrations. I don't know if you can kind of see it, but some of them are from me, and a lot of them are actually from local people in the Albuquerque community. So Bianca Sanchez, who's a tattoo artist, Emily Warziniak, who's a graphic designer, Damian Davies, who's a mentor of mine. So this art is imbued with, or this book is imbued with a lot of local art, in addition to a lot of self portraits I've done. And so it is a graphic novel of poetry, and I'm so proud for it to have a new life. It's under self publishing, so I have the full rights to distribute it, and it feels really nice. And so I would love for you to have a copy if you don't. Anyone watching now, this is my
Yes, yes.
shameless plug.
Where would they be able to get a copy?
So because it's done through my own self-publishing, I am the best way to do that. So I will have like Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, linked in the chat, and then just also for like the greater Facebook Landia, you can find me as Matthew Brown. And I'll have as many accessible ways as I can for you to buy my book, but always through me is the best way to do it.
Okay, okay. I love that cover.
Thank you.
I see the crosses. The question that my co-host normally asks, who is not here, has to do with spirituality and where that finds its way into your queerness. And I see your
Absolutely.
cover has the Christian cross, but it's upside
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's
So I'm weird. I'm like the most spiritual atheist that you'll ever meet. I don't believe in like a traditional deity, yet I have so many spiritual allusions and allegories in all of my writing. Um, I don't know. I think it's growing up Afro Latino and queer in New Mexico means being a student of Catholicism and also Anglicization. And I find that relationship so interesting. The fact that there are so many images of Jesus Christ in all of our grandmothers' living rooms, but none of them look like how the historical references of Jesus look like. There's even passages that say he has bronze skin and woolly hair, but yet we all accept this anglicized image of this figure and we just take it as fact. And so there's mythology on top of the mythology. And I find it very interesting. And the fact that Nuevo Mexicanos are so connected to their culture, yet there's tends to be a lot of religion mixed in there too. It's a very interesting and delicious irony that I think we all kind of explore once we look at the history of colonization and Anglicization. And so a lot of the times I just use religious imagery because I know that it is recognized by a lot of people. A lot of people can follow these allegories and they were raised with some of these allegories. And so it's kind of a version of code switching in a lot of ways. I found that by speaking about God or Christ, I can code switch to speak to the largest audience that I've ever reached. And as long as I can kind of transmute my pain or my sexuality and queerness in a way that comes out looking or sounding like scripture, people are willing to listen to it and they're willing to treat it like it's a sermon. And so, yeah, I just kind of have been rolling with it ever since.
yeah, wow, that's powerful. I too do put a lot of like religious into my work, but I wouldn't label myself an atheist, but yeah. And it's funny that you talk about how Albuquerque is very Catholicized.
Yeah,
When we were there, I was there I think a month ago, probably 2 months. Time has
it's
gone
just a continuum now. It stretches.
it's so bad now. But we were Marissa
Yes.
had taken us to an ice cream shop, and the people selling material were native. And I found it weird because I was like, oh, I want to get like a dream catcher or something. But everything like spiritual in their shop had like Jesus or Catholicism. And I was
Mm,
just like, that's so weird. Like,
right.
not weird. I don't want to say weird because, whatever avenue you find, that's the avenue you find. It was just see having it be so native and still so Catholic. I
Yeah.
was
It's
that's
almost like
that's weird.
a contrast between like the past and the present in a lot of different ways. Like there's old school and new school mixed together living in someone. And I think that's
Yeah,
really powerful.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that was different for me about Albuquerque, but I still it was still beautiful. It was just the thought it got me thinking,
Yeah, absolutely.
especially as a poet, it's always going to get you thinking.
Yes.
All right, so we're at the 6:30 mark. I'm going to give you 15 minutes
Awesome.
to read us some of your work, promote yourself if you want, whatever you want. You got 15 minutes. All right.
Awesome. I'm gonna try to do them all memorized. We'll see if it still lives up there. It's been like maybe a couple weeks since I've slammed, so we'll see. But in honor of coming out day and the theme of queerness, I've got a couple of pieces that kind of match that avenue. So, if I should die at some unruly hour, for the love of God, please bury me in Versace. Lower me in a gold-trimmed floral print Oraton casket filled with rhinestones on the first day of spring. Tell God and all of the other angels to put down their toys and part the clouds for my arrival. An azure runway category is me. I want Adam and David to chauffeur my wayward soul to heaven. May they arrive naked and shorn, baptized in liquid marble, deltoids, quads, obliques, and alabaster flecks, gold in ratio, the house down, tell Eve, and Coco Chanel, and all of those other jealous queens to watch from the garden as this procession of XY chromosomes, birds of a feather, a holy trail of ash, poppers, and milk. And at the falling of the first tear, bring on the orchestra. But instead of the ringing of brass, it will be the bricks of Sodom crumbling back down to earth. The hammering of Christ's crucifixion when he died for our sins, he did mean all of them. And as the sky gives way, let it rain beads of sweat from every Greek and Roman bathhouse closed in the name of quarantine or salvation. The audience will raise their tongues as this Eucharist dances from warm, soft palate to back of throat, knees trembling, and amidst it all, by the glory of the divine, let each patron see an unrequited lover at the other end of my funeral. An old flame lost to decades and circumstance. May they meet here now and make love in my honor. May the final view beyond the pearly gates be a dozen bodies locked together, grief consummated in flesh. And in that final moment before the clouds meet, may the parting words that pass through my lips be the name Gianni Versace. Thank you. And I'll go ahead and just kind of roll into the next poem. I'm actually going to read this one off of my phone, which is what I'm streaming on. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm going to be like looking right at you. This is a poem I wrote about my time in Denver shortly after moving there and just kind of what it was like being somewhere new. So let's see if I have it right here. I have arrived at the other side of fear and regret to discover that I am everything I always thought I could be. At the same time, folks in my circle tell me that I have developed an attitude. And you know what? Good. I am tired of being agreeable. There was once a point in my life where my greatest fear was simply being misunderstood. Now, I lament the times where I'm surrounded by folks who love hearing themselves talk, but ain't got shit worthwhile to say. I would rather till my silence and grow a better version of myself. Maybe one who will learn to appreciate the small talk. My last therapist told me that I place value judgments on people. I said, and? Well, I am of and for the community. The ego is how we know which neck of the hydra belongs to who. Nowadays, most folks either want to dress your throat in pearls or to part it. So spare me the guillotine. I look much better wearing a chain. I tell my lover that conflict is a virtue, that anything worth fighting for is also worth disagreeing over, that sometimes this world will shortchange you and still ask for gratuity. So your middle finger must be ready sometimes. I just want a good hill to die on, but then I remember that nothing salts the earth more than being a bastard. So I write poetry and hope that it lands like a sock full of quarters in the timpani of your ear. I swear. The crucifix in my grandmother's kitchen gets bloodier every time I see it. But as long as she can still pick jalapenos in her backyard, I know that death will never come for her. And I wish I was as certain about anything else as I was about that. I left my hometown 3 Januaries ago, and I still do not fit in here. Part of me thinks I'm never going to, and part of me likes it better that way. My worldview is New Mexican centric against the backdrop of Judeo Christian Anglicization. And while I do not like the way you plowed your fields or what you sowed, I still appreciate the roses. I'm still learning that it is all just a numbers game. What I thought I knew about racism was just a primer on class warfare. The only difference between a crack house and an Airbnb is your zip code. Hey, you. Yeah, you. I like your voting power. Do you know that we gerrymander entire districts to the shape of your anxiety for the first time ever? I am at the benefiting end of gentrification. And then I taste the food and I realize they didn't even do that shit right. So what was the point? The city of Denver has buildings taller than the dreams of the people who raised me. A square box overlooking the South Platte River, my dream, is someone else's equity farm. The other day, I saw a Rolls Royce pass by for the first time, and I swear, the only thing worse than envy is the internalized belief that I cannot cruise the same way if I just pull my heart up by my soul straps and decide I am worth every dollar I have yet to earn, and I am closing the years it takes to do the work. Is there such a thing as brown pride that isn't arrogance? Maybe existing just because I ought to is not enough. Maybe I need to stain the alabaster as I go. Maybe my brown skin or my last name are my tickets to victory, and it took me till now to finally celebrate. Thank you. I've got a little audience of a 3-year-old Dotson in the background that's barking and cheering as my poems go on. So hopefully we don't get too much noise as I perform.
You're adorable.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and roll into the next one. Let's see. What am I thinking? This is actually my favorite poem. It's not rooted about queerness, but as long as I can remember it, I feel like it keeps my brain strong, and so it's always a really good exercise. So we're gonna see if I still have it right now. I've always wanted to be struck by lightning, to become one with scorched earth and arid sky, to feel the rumble of soil and geothermal energy coursing beneath my feet, my skin alive with the flow of electricity, my spine, the world's most willing lightning rod, my soul, the path of least resistance. What if Nikola Tesla was onto something? What are we if not lightning in a bottle? Flesh wire circuitry, a bio-generated feedback of sparks. Got a little background noise, so we're going to try to push through it. A bio-generated feedback of sparks, the neuron, is an electrically conductive cell that forms the basis for all human thought. The average brain consists of over 100 billion of them. When the neuron fires, it sends a wave of energy through a sprawling network of branches like a forest of electricity, and it's enough to make you wonder, what if everyone was an open circuit and language is our alternating current? Each thought, a symphony of sparks racking the spaces between the necks like pinballs in an arcade machine until a thought becomes a word, until a word becomes a sentence and ignites an umbra of flames in your mind. The first atomic bomb was detonated 5 hours from where I was born. In the fiery foreground of the explosion, Oppenheimer quoted scripture from the Bhagavad Gita and watched as his idea melted sand into radioactive glass, destroyer of worlds. I've seen images of the human brain during its resting state. Even when not active, the mind is alight with electricity like a lighthouse or a watchtower, scouring the dark panopticon of your skull even while standing still. Your mind is live wired and awash with mushroom cloud thoughts, which is to say that your mind is a bomb that has not yet been detonated, but can you feel it like a beast in the night? All coil and crackle and flint's mouth, white hot and burning inside your skull. Imagine it until the pilot light in your soul is as bright and as hot as the Big Bang. Imagine it until it's all right there like a shadow painted against the cave wall for everyone to see. Imagine until your thoughts become so crackling electric that your mind arises from the masses as you begin to levitate between two thundering coils of spark, like Edison, like Tesla, like Einstein, Hawking, and God, like being struck by lightning. Psychological studies suggest that trauma is hereditary and travels through generations. What if all I am is just a continued current of everyone I've ever met? What if the fear and the anxiety and the citywide blackout depressions aren't a disorder, just a signal too strong for my brain's wiring to carry? What if my mind would rather use its jolt, the power of Frankenstein's monster, than fuel the rose-tinted goggles of some neuronormative existence? What if there is no such thing as polarity in this thundering gigawatt world filled with faith, electricity, and open circuits? Our souls are in constant flux. I conduit, I battery, I lightning storm in the shape of man. This thought, this one thought is yours to have. Thank you. So that's my favorite poem. I love that poem. I live in that poem. but it's really hard to memorize. So I'll do another one. It's also one that I'm like adding to my rotation. Usually, if a poet is like with it enough to actually memorize 3 poems, that's like the most that all of us can manage, just like being an adult and getting older and all of that stuff. So like if you're able to even do 3, that's amazing. But I'm like trying to stack more on top of it and just trying to see like how much my brain can carry. So we'll try this one too. We'll see how it goes. Um, Euphemisms for addiction: truth, prophecy, perfectly counterbalanced sword, the crane that built the 21st century. It is David, envisioned in marble, fiction turned theory, a projection, a feeling within the feeling made to feel whole. Ghostly aftershock, death rattle bass, $100 bills, celestial alignment, swing vote into world peace. It is chastity, nirvana, Amin, kumbaya, black hole, hallelujah. Addiction is an apostle with no Christ to dine with, just an empty seat at the table, and the stomach a cavern of free will, and the bread is sweet, and the wine is steaming, and the room is yours, so dare me not to ask when or where or why or for how long, just steeples stacked on top of steeples. Babel meets Jenga, Jesus meets the holy wood. Sin beget permission. To be an addict is to be young, confused, and on fire in a world of curious faces, ready to holy white phosphorus light the way. That I felt like Prometheus, how I devoured the sun, but was still kind enough to let the light shine through my teeth. Me, a magician with a mouthful of stars. Let me make you feel something. Let me pull your heart out of my hat like your rib cage was hidden beneath the floorboards. But there I go again, praying outside of church, the amphitheater of sobriety. A straight edge altar boy cover band, 1 psalm short of headline, mainline, main show. Addiction is front row. Broadway skag and crushed Zan, the dope show. A raised brow, open mouth, curtain call to your dealer. Addict is to their vice what theologians are to the divine. Faithful, commandment to forearm. And the black tar house of worship, one needn't bow, only nod. Encore. In the black tar house of worship, one needn't bow, only nod. Bellissimo. Dare I offend? Dare I bring up the past, skin myself alive, call it muscle memory, a false ideal, an idolatry? Simply put, a muted trumpet does not fit in Christ's orchestra, must find use for its breath somewhere else, and salvation is just a word, the same as addiction. And a fix by any other name is still a solution, the cusp of air against the throat, syllables that rise and fall like angels, like civilizations. Addiction is whatever you want it to be. Also, in the background, there's currently a Broncos game going on in Colorado, which is like a holiday. So all of my neighbors in the neighborhood are currently watching the Broncos game and screaming at the top of their lungs anytime someone scores a point. That
Yeah.
is like peak Colorado culture. Yeah,
If it helps at all, we can't hear them.
that's good. That's good. I'm just
Um,
pretending that they're cheering for me, and it's totally doing something for my ego.
that's awesome. That's exactly what's going on.
Just to check in, how are we doing on time?
You are doing well. You have 6 minutes left.
Okay. I'll see if I can squeeze one more in, and then we'll just kind of see how we're looking. So just to kind of honor the theme of coming out day, and that coming out is always a life-going process. This poem is very special to me. I only perform it in more queer spaces or spaces that I feel safe, but I'm building up to performing it into larger audiences, and so this is my coming out poem for everyone. An ode to OnlyFans. Ode to the ring light and 10-second selfie timer, ruler of DMs, bottled bathwater, feet pics, and Astroglide. I see you, champion. Starbucks and Balenciaga on a Wednesday morning. You rock Jordans and AirPods like that shit was handed to you. Tipped, if they're feeling generous. A collection plate hungry, CEO, boss bitch, self employed, sufficient, UB ecosystem, self sustaining, your own cult of personality. At $21 a subscription, you are more entertaining than Disney Plus, with a longer shelf life than Quibi and less household viewership restrictions than Netflix. Dare I say the top 1% among all creators? They call us thoughts, e-boys, or whores of Babylon if you're feeling Colorado Springs about it. My only regret is that I did not do it sooner. Picture me, the main character and star from my very own HBO Skinamax After Dark dick flick 3 years later, and we've gone international, darling. Now, I fuck like a philanthropist, a righteous fit for a charitable cause. Think PETA, Pfizer, or the Gates Foundation. No, I fuck like I have a Neapolitan complex, like a shady bitch megalomaniac pillow princess. I fuck like I have an allowance, like I own a vacation home in Mykonos. My climax knows different time zones and area codes and still has time to rest after the seventh day. I fuck like I'm the leader of an underground crime syndicate. Like I can successfully traffic your fantasies and desires from one end of the bedroom to the other. No, fuck that. I fuck like a cabal, like a deep state old money organization. Think Standard Oil, Bohemian Grove, Pan American Railroad. Think GDP, Krabby Patty secret formula, not gross domestic profit, but gross domestic boy pussy. Ode to the boy pussy. Ode to the girl dick, to the man cunt, to the parts of our bodies not recognized by heteronormative culture. You fuck to create life. We fuck to survive, to put food on the table, to help pay a rent or a mortgage. We are the champions. In a world of phallocentrism, I have forged a path with nothing more than my own submission. Me, the Zen faggot guru esoteric kinkster, electric body bag, cherry bomb philosopher, poetic porn star, and lover of man, I am proud to be number one on OnlyFans. Thank you so much. A bunch of people in my neighborhood cheered in their houses, so that means that they were listening and they really loved it.
Absolutely. Electric body bag. That goes back to the other poem you did. I really love that.
Yes, yeah, I like to like play with lines and it's fun. So yeah, I'll see. I have one more if we have enough time.
Yeah.
I will read it off of paper if I can find it. There's that sound again. I think someone literally just has like a horn that they're spinning, and every time the Broncos score, they're just like sounding the horn. It's so interesting. I do not like sports at all, so it amuses me tremendously to see how excited everyone is. Um,
Uh, I would
okay,
say that I love sports, but my Rams are being beat right now, so I'm like
it's a tough
ignoring.
time. It's a
Yeah.
tough time. um, all right, I'll go ahead and close off with this poem, and thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it. There is something wrong with you, and I do not know what it is. Maybe it's the way you look or how you act. Maybe it's the way you wear your shoulders like a guillotine frame for your head, pendulum human. There is something wrong with the way you sway from one bad decision to another. Don't you see, silly? There are only two directions: forward towards your fear and the familiar warmth of a cave, both controlled by forces unyielding to your disposition or mood. Inertia sends you forward, but momentum is what keeps you there. However, it is your carousel head and its tipped axis that leaves you looking back to the past. Tell me, what is it you hope to accomplish? To reinvent the wheel without a hammer and call it magic or capitalism? Build a telescope big enough to store your ghosts, interstellar phylactery. Hide your demons behind layers of glass so when the light comes, it turns your pain into a kaleidoscope. See the way the grief casts a shadow, make it dance like a ballerina, plie, quarter life crisis, releve, straight jacket, leotard, ronde de jambe, rock bottom, watch your life flicker in the mouth of an overhead projector. You, hypomanic time traveler. See each still frame preserved in amber, a supercut of an old grudge that leaps through the screen to haunt you, bloody technicolor and Nosferatu black and white. You, the millennium zeitgeist with a new age spark. There is something wrong with you in the way you play shadow puppets in the dark. Thank you. Also, my book is available. Please buy it. Yes,
Yes, yes. I definitely want a copy of that.
of
Um,
course.
Send me your information and I
Yes,
will
please.
order it on Friday when I get paid.
Thank you for your support. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for coming through. That was beautiful, beautiful. I love it. I love it. Um,
Thank you.
yes. And I love that having a new a poet come through because I this is the first time I've met you.
Of course.
And that's what Out Loud is here for, right? Giving a
Making
voice.
those connections. And it's like an
Yes,
interstate family. So, yeah.
absolutely. Rich is raising his hand as if we are in a classroom, so I don't know if I should get my ruler out and spank it or what's up, Rich?
I just wanted to firstly say, and you can put down the ruler, Chalky. Um, She got a rule over there probably. I wanted to firstly say thank you, Matthew, for providing an excellent feature. There it is. You got the ruler. Um, Unsurprisingly, a well done, well constructed, well thought out feature. I know you to be somebody who has been enduringly meticulous with your work, and I say that with experience because Matthew and I have on occasion shared the stage in different events in Albuquerque, which I've always been honored to be able to say that I've been on the same stage with Matthew. Not
Likewise.
we haven't been teammates, but we are alumnus of the same organization. Um, Separated by a handful of years, both in age and just circumstances. And for those who are hearing Matthew for the first time, what you ought to know is that Matthew, when he, I'm going to characterize this as a kind of bursting on the scene, although he has been there. But when he started really hitting his stride on the stages in this city, nobody was at all able to um, dismiss it or avoid it or discount it in any way because it was significant and it was marked and it was crystal clear that here we had somebody upon his entrance to the scene who had the temerity to bring good writing to poetry slams. And that is something that I think has always been evident when you hear Matthew's work. And as a quick aside, as an atheist, a confirmed atheist, I definitely resonated with what you said about involving religious terminology in the work because you know that people will connect with it, whether or not it does anything for you at all. I was raised Catholic. I think you and I once spoke about this. I was raised Catholic a very, very long time ago. And when I reached the age of reason, I was no longer anything like a believer in anything. That seeing a lover die in your arms has that effect on you. But it is one of those things that is, I think, kind of the hallmark of somebody who is a careful writer, that you know to involve references, tropes, images, characters from religious text into your work because people are going to connect with it. And they're going to connect with it from wherever they're sitting. And that could be a place where they're sitting from a very devout religious perspective or a real bitter perspective or an utterly benignly agnostic perspective. I don't know anything about it. And that's one of the things that I've always admired is Matthew's capacity to bring more than several dimensions into his work by doing that.
Thank you. That's so thoughtful and kind of you to say.
I mean it, and you know I mean it too. You know me enough to know I won't blow smoke up your ass. It's just,
I know.
it's
He
just,
says that sometimes.
yeah,
Depends
it's,
on how much Italian whiskey he's had.
Oh, okay.
yeah, yeah. I did you, you didn't, I know you don't drink actually, Shocky. So I know, but or maybe you do. I don't remember what I gave you over when you were here. I only know that I poured a whole bunch of Japanese whiskey into AJ Houston.
Yes, I had some of that.
And yes, you did. Did you like that?
Yeah, it was good.
It was pretty
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
And also the birthday girl over the course of the summit. Oh, I'm having a drink right now, so I'm kind of blanking on her name, but
Erica.
I was supposed to be there, but I
Erica,
wasn't.
who I kept insisting was 23. And I was just trying to score points with her, but um, so, and I want to thank you, Shocky, for bringing Matthew here because it's a delight for me personally to see you, Shocky, hearing Matthew for the first time because it's one of those, Matthew is one of those poets who I would rather have the ability to introduce people to for that reason. There's a few people I have kind of a jaded perspective of the Albuquerque's literary community. And that's just kind of my own baggage, but there's one thing that nobody can say that the Albuquerque scene hasn't engendered the prominence and careers of many a good poet, Matthew included. So again, thank you, Matthew. And I'm very, very proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you so
You-
much.
You're welcome.
Yes.
And I'll take my answer off the air. Long time, no time.
Okay. No, but yes, thank you. Thank you again. Please put in the chat where people can get in touch with you to get a
Yes.
copy of your book.
Let's see. Let me make sure I have my links on hand. Venmo here. The one thing I didn't come prepared. Of course, when it comes to selling our own work, we're like, wait, what do we do?
Yeah,
So let
same.
me.
I get so mad when people ask for my Venmo. So I'm like, who uses Venmo? And I have it simply for the fact of selling my book. So
It's
don't use it.
important.
Yeah, but then when someone's like, "Yeah, I'll buy your book through Venmo," I'm like, "Why are you like this?"
Okay, so my Cash App is MLB Poetry 1995, and I'm also going to put it in the chat, but that's the easiest one to follow. So just my initials. Let's see.
Are you a baseball
Ooh.
fan or no?
That is just my initials, Matthew Leonard Brown.
Oh,
Let's see, MLB Poetry 1995. I do have copies of my book, Among God and Other Drugs. It's on sale for $30, so please buy it if you're so inclined, and I would love any support.
absolutely, absolutely. Please go out and grab a copy. I mean, a poetry graphic novel is awesome. Like the
Thank
idea of
you.
that is awesome. So I say I hope all of you go out and get you a copy. And you know, if you got something left over, get you a copy of the OutLoud anthology.
Absolutely.
Pretend I'm holding it up. It's got rainbows on it and stuff, you know. Um, you get that from reddergreenbooks.com or net, one of those, I don't know. But you can get it um, and support queer artists because that is our main goal here at the Out Loud podcast is giving a voice to queer artists and also supporting them. So again, Matthew, thank you so much for coming through and for everyone who came through and spoke as well. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope you have a good evening.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and thank you, and take care.
Thanks.